removing friction and where we get with current enablement efforts are what I see a lot is continued resistance from salespeople. It's kind of like, okay, it's just something you have to do, like I mentioned before. Revenue typically isn't growing because of this, and the volume of private offers is going up maybe a little bit, but not a tremendous growth in private offers, which only will happen if your salespeople are into it. So I think the focus on sales enablement should be, how do we sell this best? So it's a very different way to look at it. I think a lot of salespeople, like I said, are kind of like the pain in the ass thing is, we have to deal with this again. It's like, flip that completely around and think, what's the best way to actually leverage this? This is an example. Ryan Cartwright is a friend who was a peer at the company that I worked with when I first did my first deal and saw all the value. So I was that person, in the company who was kind of like, hey, everyone should take a look at this. I mean, check this out. This is amazing what happened. Like I closed the deal way faster. The prices was higher, the whole thing. Well, he really embraced it, and he took a $150K deal with their Emirates airline to from $150K to $700,000, all paid up front. So he basically did an increase in the second year and another increase in the third year, and they paid it all up front in order to leverage their AWS commit. So this is just an example of what can be done. And he's continued to do this throughout the time since he started it. He just continues to sort of focus on it, become more of an expert. So what's the best approach to success? I think there are three things that companies need to do. And if you can influence this within your company, and we're happy to share and have a conversation with executives, with whoever needs to know this, that this is the first step, and it's really a non-starter if your compensation is not aligned. And by composite, I'm not saying pay everybody more on every transaction. It's more the comp positive thing is make sure that it's comp neutral, and also provide some kind of motivation like bonuses or spiffs, at least to get the program going. That part is just motivation. This is necessary, obviously, operational sales enablement, but this sort of enhanced sales process, that's where the revenue increase comes from. So when it comes to the focus on deal specific in the field, salespeople embracing this and really understanding how to do this, because like we said, the whole point here in terms of this go-to-market is increasing revenue. So how to engage, I want to touch on this real quick before I jump into some of the more core material about the cloud marketplace selling. Basically establishing that comp neutral plan, or at least comp neutral, if not comp positive. Educate salespeople on the individual opportunities, so why it matters to them. Require certification. That's something that we offer at G3/CloudAtlas, and something you could do yourself as well. And then make it easy. Find a way, a well thought out approach that works well with what you do and your motion, to get salespeople up to speed and keep them in the loop over time. Because I think everyone agrees that spending time in the space, that the things are evolving with the marketplaces, and it's important to keep on top of that and know what changes are happening that are going to impact how you work with customers. So the dual sales motion is the approach that I teach to salespeople, that is really what I believe drives true success in the marketplace. And the benefits of doing this, and this is where salespeople really need to pay attention, because all of these things are sitting out there. Increased deal sizes, accelerating deals. I mean, almost every deal, if you talk to a seller who's really an expert in this, they know that most deals accelerate when you go through the marketplace. Marginalizing competition is huge in 2024, because right now not a lot of salespeople know what they're doing. So if your competitor does, you're kind of in trouble, especially if they have a commit, they want to spend it. I was in a situation like that where I closed a deal. They just dropped all discussions with the other competition because I brought up marketplace and they wanted to make the transaction there. So increasing control is something that a lot of people don't think about as well, is that if you bring this up early with the customer and you're managing that conversation, then you are also able to manage things better with the cloud provider, and that's a great co-sell, part of the co-sell motion. So increase in customer satisfaction, this is also an opportunity for you to bring the benefits of marketplace to their attention, and the benefits are awesome. So being able to use those things, in this case, like with Peter, he was able to increase a deal from 500K to 1.5. In both of these cases, there's a lot of different ways to do this. It's not necessarily that you need to do a multi-year deal, but that is a great way to position it. And because not a lot of people are familiar with how to go forward with it, highly recommend having that in your back pocket if you get into this discussion and you're driving down the road of a private offer. So the the benefits of co-selling, in addition to the benefits that you get from the customer conversation and bringing that up, and how you can impact things yourself. Well, this is part of that. So these things kind of blend together. But what you're getting with working with a cloud provider, obviously, these are the largest, most powerful companies in the world. So credibility and trust. It's hard to say if somebody likes the person, but you know that they know them. It's very public. What Amazon, Microsoft, Google, what they are, right? And there's trust built in. So that is, I believe, by far the most important thing in terms of co-selling with them. If they partner up with you, they also give you a huge competitive advantage. I mean, picture if you found out your competitor was hand in hand with AWS in an account, for instance. Medic, of course, that's there's a lot of access to that, broader, organizational access, et cetera. So eventually you'll get leads if you are co-selling very effectively in the field, especially. And I think of the Forrester, I think a lot of people have heard this and some people kind of poo-poo it like, I don't know if that's really true. Well, I believe that this is just a baseline. If all of your salespeople are actively talking about marketplace in the field, it's going to be very different. So this is where we get to the how-to. The dual sales motion is basically super simple. The first part is just the customer conversation. You bring it up with the customer, and then you start to go down that path. And that sets up the second part, which is what I refer to as the field level co-sell. And what you're using, of course, is the commit. There's cloud credits. I can get into an explanation of how this whole flow works and why I've chosen to point out that this is kind of the progression from my perspective that you go through in terms of what you can use most effectively. Cloud credits are something to be careful with. Of course, you need to apply for that. You need to make sure you're already co-selling in order to bring that up in the first place. But there is a benefit to every customer, and I truly believe this. If they have a relationship with a cloud provider, it is absolutely possible that there is a benefit for each and every customer. And that's something we can get into. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to field them later about this specific thing, because I think a lot of people think, well, it's over. If they don't have a commit, then it doesn't matter. And I believe very strongly that that is not true. So the process is kind of like this: open the discussion about the marketplace, and then as you introduce the benefits, you basically leverage those benefits throughout. And you just have to figure out, in terms of the sales process, bring it up early, like in the discovery discussion, and then, when do you bring it up again, and how do you handle that? These are the things that are part of what I call mastering the customer conversation. The other part is using that customer conversation and your co-sell story, which is very important to have together. And I think every sales rep should have a sort of like a battle card with their co-sell story on it. And of course, we provide that kind of thing for our customers, but you can also do that internally. Basically how to engage with the cloud provider sales team. And that's what I think of as mastering co-selling with the cloud providers. So you can be a master of both right now. It's actually pretty easy because not a lot of people are doing it. So the bar is fairly low right now. I think over time, a lot more salespeople are going to get familiar. But what I mean by mastering the customer conversation is knowing, when to bring it up, how do you do it, like what do you say, how do you direct that conversation, where do you go from there? I think a lot of salespeople are afraid to bring it up, or not afraid, but just hesitant maybe because it's like, bring up commit, they say no, you're done, right? Is that true? Well, it definitely doesn't have to be. And that's what I mean by trying out fishing. And if you cast once and don't catch anything and fishing doesn't work, well, you got to keep casting. Same kind of concept here. And then, you need to know how to use what you learn. And then the key thing too, that kind of is related to directing the conversation is you need to know where to go with it, right? Like how the whole thing works in order to guide the conversation. So when it comes to that, when do you bring it up? I say very early, as soon as you can. I would build it into the first conversation. And there's a way to do that. It might sound aggressive, but you can do that in a very soft way. The whole point is just to bring it up. I always say to start with a commit. It's the most obvious thing. A lot of times the end user doesn't even know, but you can educate them. And as you educate them, you start to open up different paths to leverage points throughout the sales process. And then knowing, using what you learn, basically being able to package that up and be able to discuss that with the cloud provider sales team. And basically what it is they care about a deal, they care about marketplace, they care about consumption of their cloud infrastructure, and they care about your joint value proposition. It's very straightforward. This takes a little bit of work, of course, just like anything, but you do it once and you're good. So that's another kind of a battle card thing that fits in well with how you go to market if the cloud marketplace is something that's important to you. When it comes to the full process, that's a little bit more, break that down to these kind of 4 categories of managing it to determine the value to them, how you act on it. And then the manage the co-selling process is part of that. So knowing how to bring this up with your cloud provider counterparts, and then know what to ask from them too. That's a key part of co-selling is, hey, that's great if you have a great message, but be prepared with an ask. And a lot of that has to do with where you're at in the deal and what you need in order to get the deal done. And then just, of course, this is more of an operational thing from my perspective, but knowing how the private offer process works and how to get that done. And just being prepared so that when that time comes, you're confident and ready to go. So mastering co-selling, this is a little bit different, of course, because you need to know what they care about. As cloud providers, this is like 101 partnering. What matters to the partner? How do you speak their language? People use that term, how to speak their language. It's actually, I think it's very simple. I think you can get deep into it, especially with Microsoft and the different programs and stuff that they have available. But speaking their language just means having that co-sell story. That is by far the most important, even if you don't even know the acronyms. And then you throw a few acronyms out there, like what's your commit called, then you're speaking their language directly. So to me, speaking their language just means as a salesperson, how are you going to help me? Knowing how to use that customer conversation to your advantage means the stuff that you gather from the customer and how to share that with the cloud provider in a way that you're speaking their language. And then again, key there to have an ask. So with the cloud marketplace and transacting there, the whole point is you want to do that when you can, if you can use that to accelerate deals, but that's not the goal. The goal is to have that as an option and take advantage of it if you can. Whereas with co-selling, that's an every deal situation if you can. Not everybody's a great partner. Not everybody's definitely going to partner directly. So that's not always an option. So mastering co-selling is about what they care about. And again, we already covered this. The customer conversation info, the fact that you're driving the marketplace discussion means that you're not going to be disrupted later in the sales process when a cloud provider salesperson comes in and asks the customer for it. And it sort of changes the perspective. And again, could be some disruption there. And then what to ask for, of course, like I mentioned, is it depends on what you need to close the deal. So that's basically, I haven't done a great job of looking at questions in the chat. If there are some there, we can field them in a minute here, but I'm just going to touch on very quickly some of the service offerings that we have and then open it up to answer any questions. So we are offering at G3, which is of course now going to be under the brand of CloudAtlas, multi-cloud marketplace selling subscription. So there's a guided course available, and we'll provide this information as a follow-up too, so that you don't need to write this down, because I'm sure everybody's scribbling madly. But anyway, the guided course or a individual subscription where you can do a self-guided course that includes an AI bot and where you can ask questions about marketplace that are specific to sellers and the sales motion, and then certifications available through CloudAtlas as well to be a multi-cloud marketplace, certified multi-cloud marketplace seller. Then we offer co-selling augmentation, meaning we can work alongside you in deals. There's also strategic deal assistance, where if there is a specific deal that's huge and important to your company, you can engage with us, and we can help you in that process, either working with the customer directly with your logo on the hat, or working behind the scenes to help you work through that process. Also, there's a targeted approach for near-term success. So some people who have a listing and kind of feel like, hey, we need to get some wins here quickly. What's the best way to do that? And we help with a targeted approach to who that should be and how to actually engage there. And that's a great opportunity to engage in with your sales process specifically, and be able to address the things that are specific to your company and your offering, as well as that specific deal that you're in. And lastly, the workshop. So this is a great way to just get some insight into what's important when it comes to sales-led growth and the cloud marketplaces, whether that's strategic with leadership in sales or sales enablement with direct sellers. So that wraps it up. And